The air in the Empyrean Lounge was thick with the scent of ozone and entitlement. It hung 1,000 stories above Neo-Kyoto, a city that bled neon into the perpetual twilight of the smogosphere. Kaelen traced the condensation on his glass of Jovian ice whiskey, the cold doing nothing to numb the phantom ache in his cybernetic arm. Around him, the glitterati of the solar system laughed, their voices a meaningless symphony of synthesized accents and casual cruelty. They were vultures in couture, picking at the bones of a galaxy Kaelen no longer cared to save. A silent, hovering service drone purred at his elbow, its single optical lens a placid blue. "Another, Mr. Varo?" Kaelen grunted an affirmative, his gaze fixed on the drone's polished chrome chassis. 10 years. 10 years since he'd traded his ghost operative gear for bespoke suits, and a corner office overlooking a city he'd once bled to protect. 10 years of pretending the ghosts didn't whisper his name in the whine of a passing maglev. "And I believe I'm ready for the Elysian." The drone's blue light flickered to a cautionary amber. "Sir, the Elysian requires Tier 7 clearance and a significant biometric waiver. It is an experience." Kaelen smirked, a bitter, unfamiliar gesture. "My credit rating is an experience. My therapist bills are an experience. I think I can handle dinner." He pressed his thumb against the table's integrated scanner. His credentials scrolled across the polished surface in glowing script. Ex-Aegis Spectre, first in, last out. Decorated for actions on Titan, Callisto, and the Orion Veil. Pensioned out after the incident. The amber light on the drone turned a deferential green. "Of course, Mr. Varo, the culinary artist will begin the presentation. Estimated time is 60 minutes. Kaelen waved it away, turning to the vast, floor-to-ceiling window. Below, the city was a neural network of light and shadow, a place where fortunes were made and lives were deleted in the space of a heartbeat. He remembered running those razor-thin alleyways, the thrill of the hunt of fire in his veins. Now the only thing that burned was the whiskey. The whiskey arrived, a perfect sphere of amber suspended in a magnetic field. Kaelen drank, the cold fire a familiar comfort. The lounge buzzed with activity. A Martian mining baron showcased a new pet, a genetically engineered fox with shimmering fiber-optic fur. A delegation from Europa negotiated trade routes in hushed, clicking tones, their gelatinous forms quivering in lev chairs. Time became a liquid stretching and pooling. Kaelen ordered another whiskey. And another. The chatter around him sharpened as other patrons were served their own impossible meals. Flame-seared cometary ice, gravity-defying soufflés woven from Martian dust motes, dishes that were more abstract art than sustenance. Finally, the service drone returned, followed by two larger, more imposing models pushing a cart shrouded in black silk. The lead drone's optical lens was now a deep, unsettling crimson. "Your Elysian, Mr. Varo?" With a synchronized, silent flourish, the two larger drones whisked away the silk cover. Kaelen's glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor with a sound that was swallowed by the lounge's ambient hum. Strapped to the cart by shimmering incandescent bands of light was a woman. Her skin was the color of deep twilight, shot through with veins that pulsed with a soft, silver bioluminescence. Long white hair cascaded around a face of impossible, heartbreaking beauty. But it was her eyes that seized his soul and held it fast. They were pure obsidian, reflecting the lounge's opulent lights like captured galaxies. And they were filled with a terror so profound, so absolute, it was a physical force. She was gagged with a strip of the same energy that bound her, but a choked, desperate sound escaped her throat. Their eyes locked, and Kaelen's mind fractured. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a thought. It was a feeling. An invasive wave of pure, undiluted emotion crashing through the carefully constructed dams of his apathy. Fear, agony, a desperate, soul-shattering plea that transcended language. He recoiled, his chair scraping against the floor, a gasp tearing from his lungs. "Is the presentation to your liking, sir?" The lead drone inquired, its voice a smooth, synthetic balm. "The specimen is a Lyran, a silver tongue. Their synaptic responses to extreme emotional states create a cascade of neuropeptides that are, quite simply, divine. We have taken the liberty of inducing a state of optimal terror for the palate." "What is this?" Kaelen's voice was a ragged whisper. "The rarest dish in the known universe, Mr. Varo, as you requested." The drone's crimson eye seemed to smile. "Shall the artist proceed with the final preparation?" Kaelen looked back at the woman. The person. Her struggles had ceased. Her obsidian eyes burned into his, and another wave of emotion struck him, weaker this time, but shaped with impossible clarity into a single word: save me. 10 years of therapy, of charity galas, of burying the man he was under a mountain of credits and regret, all of it turned to ash. His ghost operative combat augments, dormant for a decade, surged online, flooding his vision with tactical overlays, threat vectors, exit strategies. Old ghosts rising from their graves. "Is there an issue, Mr. Varo?" One of the larger drones had shifted its stance, and Kaelen's augments flagged an energy signature building within its arm. Kaelen smiled, a true smile this time, all predator. No issue at all. His cybernetic hand snaked out, not for a weapon, but for the table's control interface. "Just find the lighting in here a little." "Gauche." With a flick of his wrist, he rerouted the lounge's entire power grid into the crystalline light fixtures. The Empyrean lounge exploded into a supernova of white light and razor-sharp shrapnel. Screams echoed in the sudden, blinding darkness, the chaos punctuated by the faint emergency lighting strips on the floor. Kaelen was a phantom in the chaos. Before the drone could fire, he had vaulted the table, his cybernetic fist connecting with its optical sensor, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. The other two drones swiveled, but he was already past them, a blur of motion his years of civilian life had failed to erase. His augmented vision cut through the strobing darkness, highlighting the control panel on the woman's restraints. A single, precise strike was all it took. The energy bands flickered and died. She slumped forward, and he caught her. She was impossibly light, and the warmth of her living body was a shock to his system. He ripped the energy gag from her mouth as the lounge doors burst open, silhouetting armored security forces, their pulse rifles whining as they charged. "Can you run?" he asked, his voice low and urgent. She nodded, her throat working. "Yes," she whispered, her voice a melody he felt in his bones. "Then let's go." He grabbed her hand, the contact sending another jolt through him, and pulled her towards the kitchens. Energy bolts sizzled past, superheating the air, turning priceless art installations into molten slag. They crashed through the kitchen doors, chefs and drones scattering in panic. Kaelen's tactical overlay painted pathways through the chaos, threat assessment scrolling in his peripheral vision. "Service lift," he muttered, spotting the exit. 3 more security guards blocked their path, weapons raised. "Freeze! Surrender the asset!" one of them bellowed. Beside him, the woman let out a soft, almost inaudible hum. The guards suddenly screamed, dropping their rifles and clawing at their helmets, their minds filled with a phantom agony she had projected. Kaelen didn't hesitate. He moved through them like a wraith, a whirlwind of precise disabling strikes. A knee shattered, an elbow dislocated, a nerve cluster at the neck pinched. 3 bodies dropped without a single shot fired. "Impressive," he said, turning back to her. She was leaning against a counter, breathing heavily, a hand pressed to her temple. "It takes a toll," she gasped. "I can't do it again." "Not soon." More footsteps, heavier this time, pounded towards them. He grabbed her hand again and slammed the lift's call button. The doors opened with agonizing slowness. They dove inside as pulse fire stitched a pattern of glowing holes across the kitchen. Kaelen hammered the button for the subterranean levels, then punched the control panel, showering the lift in sparks as it began its chaotic descent. "I am Lyra," the woman said, her breath still catching. "Thank you for that." "Kaelen," he replied, checking the small-caliber holdout pistol hidden in his sleeve, the monomolecular blade in his shoe, pathetically under-equipped. "Don't thank me. This is where it gets worse." "Why?" She studied him, those galaxy eyes seeming to strip away his 10 years of carefully crafted lies. "Why did you help me?" Kaelen opened his mouth, the easy answers dying on his lips. Because the Aegis Creed was burned into his soul? Because he was tired of being a ghost? Because for the first time in a decade, he felt something other than numb? "Because my dinner shouldn't have a name," he said, the words tasting like truth. And I used to be the guy who pulled people out of the fire." The lift shuddered to a halt, the doors groaning open onto a cavernous, dark sublevel filled with the silent, hulking shapes of luxury transport vehicles. "Used to be?" Lyra asked, her voice soft. Kaelen drew his pistol, his augment scanning the shadows. "Yeah," he said, a grim smile touching his lips. "Looks like old habits die hard. Let's hope I remember how to do this." The garage was a concrete labyrinth, a graveyard of obscene wealth. Kaelen's augments painted heat signatures on his vision. Security teams fanning out, converging. They had minutes, maybe less. "My vehicle's on the upper strata," he muttered. "We'll never make it." "They're sealing the exits," Lyra whispered, a hand to her temple again. "I can feel their thoughts. They're organized, cold. They're not just security." "No," Kaelen growled. "They're corporate soldiers. This is a Syndicate operation," he cursed his own stupidity. The Elysian wasn't just some black market delicacy. It was a statement of power from an entity that operated above the law. His assets, his name, his entire life was already being deleted. "How do you feel about heights?" he asked, his eyes locking onto a network of maintenance conduits running along the ceiling. Lyra followed his gaze, then looked back at him. A faint, luminous smile touched her lips. "I was served on a floating platter 1,000 stories in the air. I think I'll manage." Pulse fire erupted from the far end of the garage, turning a 1 billion-credit hover limo into a burning wreck. They scrambled up a cargo lift, Kaelen providing covering fire while Lyra seemed to flow up the structure with an unnatural grace. They reached the conduits just as the security teams opened fire in earnest. "There's a maglev transit line 3 levels down," he said, his voice tight as he navigated the narrow walkway. "If we can get to it." He was cut off by a high-pitched whine. He tackled Lyra, pulling her flush against the conduit as something small and silver whistled past, embedding itself in the concrete wall with a sharp crack. It wasn't a bullet. It was a monofilament flechette. He knew only one type of operative used those. A figure dropped from a higher level, landing on the conduit with silent grace. They were clad in sleek black armor that absorbed the light, the Syndicate's Hydra crest glowing softly on their chest. A professional, a hunter. The hunter's whip-like monofilament lash snaked out again. Kaelen parried with the blade from his shoe, the impact screaming as molecule-thin edges met. He pushed Lyra behind him. "Run! Get to the transit line! Go!" She hesitated, her obsidian eyes wide. "Go!" The hunter was on him, a whirlwind of motion. They were fast, augmented to the teeth, their reflexes a blur. Kaelen's own systems, top of the line a decade ago, screamed warnings of obsolescence. But software could be patched. Experience was etched in bone. He took a cut across his ribs, the filament lash parting his suit and skin with surgical precision. He ignored the fire in his side, using the moment to grab the whip, yanking the hunter off balance. They crashed together, a brutal close-quarters ballet of violence. Kaelen felt his age in the protest of his joints, the burn in his lungs. But the muscle memory was there. The cold, calculating mind of the specter took over. He found an opening, a fractional shift in weight, and drove his cybernetic knuckles into the hunter's helmet, cracking the visor. A final, precise strike to the power pack at the base of the hunter's neck, and the sleek black armor went limp. Kaelen staggered back, clutching his side, his blood warm and slick against his skin. He retrieved the hunter's sidearm and credit chit, then limped towards the transit line access hatch. Lyra was waiting, her face etched with worry. "You're bleeding. I'll live," he gasped. "But we have to go." That wasn't just a soldier. That was one of their elite. "They'll send more." He pried open the hatch, revealing the dark, roaring tunnel of the maglev system. "Welcome to the underbelly, Lyra. It's about to be a very long night." The roar of the maglev train was a physical force, a hurricane of displaced air that threatened to rip them from their hiding place in a service alcove. Kaelen's augments scanned the network schematics, painting a glowing route through the city's forgotten arteries. Lyra huddled beside him, her strange bioluminescence a soft counterpoint to the tunnel's oppressive darkness. "We need a new identity, transportation, and a place to disappear," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "They'll be monitoring every official channel." "I know a guy," Kaelen grunted, applying a dermal regenerator from the hunter's medkit to his side. The wound sizzled shut with a puff of vapor. An information broker. Calls himself Echo. Lives off the grid, deep in the old city foundations. If anyone can get us ghost identities, it's him. His internal comm crackled, a sound it hadn't made in 10 years. A Priority 1 Aegis alert. His old clearance code, somehow still active, was being flagged. His biometrics were being broadcast across the entire city's security network. "They've branded me," he whispered, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "They've painted a target on my back for every bounty hunter and law enforcement drone in the system." Lyra placed a hand on his arm. The contact was electric. He didn't just feel her touch. He felt a wave of calm, a cool blue wave washing over the frantic red panic that was threatening to engulf him. "How many?" she whispered, sensing his rising tension. "Too many." "Then we have to move faster." They ran. They navigated the labyrinthine tunnels, Lyra's empathic senses acting as an early warning system. 2 minds ahead, she'd murmur. Anxious, hunting. And they would change course, melting into side tunnels and ventilation shafts. But the net was tightening. They were being herded. They emerged into a vast, cavernous cistern, the city's ancient waterworks. The air was thick with the smell of rust and decay. And waiting for them, illuminated by the cold glare of their helmet lights, were a dozen more Syndicate hunters. They were trapped. "So," Kaelen said, raising the hunter's stolen pistol, "this is Echo's place?" "The decor is a little hostile for my taste." "He likes his privacy," a new voice echoed through the cistern, seeming to come from everywhere at once. A wizened, impossibly old man in a threadbare coat materialized from the shadows behind the hunters. He leaned on a cane that hummed with concealed technology. "Kaelen Varo, an Aegis Spectre. I thought your kind went extinct." "Echo," Kaelen acknowledged, not lowering his weapon. "You're looking preserved." "And you're looking like the most wanted man in the system," Echo countered, his eyes, magnified by thick lenses, glinting. "The Syndicate has put a price on your head that could buy a small moon. These gentlemen are here to collect." "Let me guess," Kaelen said. "You sold us out." "Business is business," Echo shrugged. "But for an old friend? I'll offer a discount. Give me the girl and I'll give you a 5-minute head start. They'll still catch you, of course, but it's a nice gesture." Lyra stepped forward, her silver-veined skin glowing brighter in the darkness. "You traffic in people." It wasn't a question. "I traffic in information," Echo corrected her smoothly. "And the information says you are the most valuable commodity to appear in a century. A pure-blood Lyran. They were wiped out during the Outer Rim purges. You, my dear, are a living ghost." "Not for long if you get your way," Kaelen growled. "There's no way out, Varo," Echo sighed.
"Surrender."
"Don't make this messy." Kaelen looked at Lyra. He saw the fear in her eyes, but underneath it, something else. A core of steel, a fierce, defiant will to live. He saw the ghost of the man he used to be. The choice was simple. It had always been simple. Messy was always my speciality. He dropped a flashbang grenade. As it detonated, Lyra unleashed a psychic scream, not of pain, but of pure, weaponized despair. The hunters staggered, their advanced targeting systems useless against an assault on their own minds. In the blinding, strobing chaos, Kaelen moved. He was no longer a retired executive. He was a specter. He dismantled the first 2 hunters with brutal efficiency, using their own bodies as shields. He fired the stolen pistol, each shot a precise, calculated hit on a weak point in their armor. But there were too many. A plasma bolt caught him in the shoulder, his suit smoking. Another grazed his leg. He was slowing down. Then, from the darkness above, a new sound. The whine of high-yield plasma cannons. The hunters looked up, confused, just as twin beams of incandescent energy lanced down, turning 2 of them into clouds of superheated ash. A sleek, matte black gunship, an old military-grade Phantom-class infiltrator, descended into the cistern, its landing gear deploying with a heavy thud. The side door slid open. "Having fun, Kaelen?" A woman's voice, laced with static and amusement, crackled from the ship's external speakers. "Or did you just miss getting shot at?" A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, clad in combat gear and holding a ridiculously large sniper rifle.
Maya?
Kaelen breathed, shocked. Your retirement plan always sucked, Maya quipped, her rifle spitting fire, suppressing the remaining hunters. Get in, you idiots! Kaelen grabbed Lyra's hand, pulling her toward the gunship as Echo and his surviving hunters scrambled for cover. They leaped into the troop bay as the Phantom lifted off, its engines screaming. I thought you were dead, Kaelen said, looking at his former partner. Maya, her face older, scarred, but with the same fire in her eyes, just grinned. I got better. Got your Aegis alert. Figured you'd finally gotten bored of counting your money. Lyra suddenly collapsed, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The ship, she whispered. The others. I can feel them. Kaelen and Maya followed her gaze to the back of the cargo bay. Lined against the wall were half a dozen stasis pods, and inside each one was a Lyran, just like her. The Syndicate wasn't just hunting you, Maya said, her voice grim. They've been collecting your entire species, and I know where they're taking them. On the ship's main view screen, she pulled up a tactical map. At its center was a heavily fortified space station orbiting a dead moon. Project Chimera, Maya said. The Syndicate's private R&D facility. They're not serving your people on platters, Lyra. They're weaponizing them. Kaelen looked from the stasis pods to Lyra's terrified face, then to the impossible fortress on the screen. His life of quiet desperation was over. His past had come for him, and for the first time in 10 years, he knew exactly what he had to do. How do we get in? The bridge of Maya's gunship, the Vagabond, was a chaotic symphony of light and data. Tactical overlays of Project Chimera filled the holographic displays, a fortress bristling with point defense cannons, drone swarms, and capital-class energy shielding. Getting in is the easy part, Maya said, chewing on an unlit synth cigar. This old girl still has her Aegis stealth protocols. We can ghost our way to the docking bay. It's getting out with 200 of Lyra's people that's the problem. 200? Kalen's blood ran cold. He had seen the 6 pods on her ship. He hadn't grasped the scale. Lyra stood before the main display, her hands pressed against the cool glass as if she could reach through it to the souls trapped inside. They're terrified, she whispered, her obsidian eyes mirroring the star-dusted void. They're being dissected. Their essence, their ability to connect, is being distilled into a serum. A weapon, Kaelen finished, the pieces clicking into place. Mass emotional control, the ability to make an army feel terror, or fanatical loyalty, the perfect weapon. And the Syndicate plans to auction it off to the highest bidder, Maya added grimly. They've invited every major power and criminal empire to a private demonstration. In 3 days. 3 days until Lyra's entire species became a footnote in an arms deal. There's a central processing core, Kaelen said, his Spectre training taking over as he analyzed the station's schematics. It controls the containment fields for all the specimen pods. If we can overload it, we can trigger a mass release. A mass release into a station full of trigger-happy guards and psychopathic buyers? Maya raised a skeptical eyebrow. That's not a rescue, Kaelen. That's a massacre. It's a distraction, he countered. While they're dealing with the chaos, we get the prisoners to the emergency escape pods. The station is legally required to have enough for all personnel and cargo. Lyra turned from the screen. I can do more than that. When the fields drop, I can connect with them. All of them. I can soothe their panic. I can guide them. A shepherd for your flock? Maya murmured, studying her with newfound respect. It will be a strain, Lyra admitted, a faint tremor in her hands. I've never tried to connect with so many at once. The feedback. It could kill me. Then I'll just have to get to that core before you burn out, Kaelen said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Maya, can you raise hell at the main docking port? Draw their primary security response away from the lower levels. Maya's grin was feral. You mean I get to blow things up with my big ship? Kaelen, it's like my birthday. The plan was insane. A frontal assault on a fortress, a psychic Hail Mary, and a prayer. But looking at Lyra, at the quiet, unyielding strength in her eyes, Kaelen knew they had no other choice. As the Vagabond slipped into the station's shadow, Lyra approached him. When we were in the garage, she began, her voice soft, I felt more than just your fear. I felt your past. A fire. Screams! Kaelen flinched. The memory of the Shanghai incident, the botched raid, the civilian casualties rising like bile in his throat. The failure that had made him quit the Aegis. "It was a mistake," he said, his voice flat. "It doesn't have to define you," she said, her hand finding his. This time, the feeling that flowed from her wasn't a projection. It was her own gratitude, trust, and something warmer, something deeper that made his synthetic heart ache. What they do to my people. They strip away their ability to feel, to connect. They turn them into things. You looked at me, and you saw a person. "You are a person," he said, his grip tightening on her hand. "Let's go get your family." The infiltration was flawless. Maya's stealth tech was even better than he remembered. They docked in a deserted maintenance bay. The silence of the station a deeply unsettling counterpoint to the life-or-death mission ahead. As they moved through the cold, sterile corridors, Lyra's hand flew to her temple. "He's here," she gasped. "The one from the restaurant. The one who ordered me." Her voice was laced with a new kind of terror. Not just him. The head of the Syndicate. A man named Silas Core. I can feel his mind. It's a void. Cold. Empty. He enjoys this. Their mission had just gotten personal. They reached the juncture. Kaelen would head for the processing core. Lyra would find a secure network access point to prepare her psychic broadcast. "Be careful," she whispered, her obsidian eyes pleading. "No promises," he said, giving her hand a final squeeze. "Just results." As he watched her disappear down a separate corridor, Maya's voice crackled in his comms. "Showtime, Kaelen. Try not to die before the fun part." The first explosion rocked the station to its foundations. Maya had begun her party, and Kaelen ran, a ghost in the machine, ready to pull the whole damn temple down. The station erupted into organized chaos. Alarms blared, crimson emergency lights painting the corridors in blood. Syndicate guards in heavy armor swarmed towards the main docking bay, completely ignoring the lone figure sprinting in the opposite direction. Kaelen moved like a phantom, his old skills a second skin. He took down lone guards with silent, non-lethal efficiency, melting back into the shadows before their bodies hit the floor. His objective was a singular point of light on his HUD, the primary neurocore. In a secure data haven, Lyra connected herself to the station's network. Closing her eyes, she reached out with her mind, not into the network's code, but into its soul. She felt the digital ghosts of her people, their biosignatures logged and cataloged like inventory, and she began to sing. A silent, psychic melody of hope and reassurance, planting a seed of calm that would bloom the moment the cage doors opened. Kaelen reached the core chamber. It was a cavernous room, dominated by a pulsating sphere of light suspended in a magnetic field. And standing before it, flanked by two hulking bioengineered abominations, was Silas Core. He was a small, unassuming man in a simple gray suit. But the sheer emptiness Kaelen felt in his presence was more terrifying than any monster. "Kaelen Varo," Core said, his voice calm, conversational. "The ghost of Shanghai. I should have known the rumors of your retirement were exaggerated." "Core," Kaelen acknowledged, his hand hovering over his sidearm. "You're a hard man to find." "I cultivate privacy," Core smiled, a chillingly pleasant expression. "It allows me to pursue my art, and the Lyrans, they are my masterpiece. To distill the very essence of emotion, of connection, it is the next step in human evolution. True control." The two bioengineered guards stepped forward, their muscles rippling. They were augmented beyond recognition, more machine and monster than man. "This ends now," Kaelen said, drawing his weapon. "My dear Spectre," Core chuckled, "it is already over." He gestured to the neurocore. "The auction has been moved up. The demonstration is beginning, and you are just in time for the grand finale." The light in the core intensified, and Kaelen heard it. A psychic scream of 1,000 voices, amplified, weaponized. It hit him like a physical blow, and wave of pure agony that brought him to his knees, his advanced augments offering no defense. Through the pain, he saw Core watching him, his eyes devoid of any emotion, a curious scientist observing a specimen. As Kaelen's vision began to fade, a new sensation pushed back against the tide of pain. Lyra. She was fighting the weaponized broadcast, her own psychic energy a shield, a sanctuary. He felt her strength pouring into him, and with a roar, he fought his way back to his feet. The two guards charged. The fight was brutal. They were stronger, faster, but Kaelen was smarter. He used the environment, dodging behind server racks, causing electrical shorts. He wasn't fighting to win. He was fighting to buy time. "The pods are opening, Kaelen," Lyra's voice urged in his mind. "The people are free, but they are disoriented. Core's forces are moving to contain them." He had one chance. Ignoring the guards, he charged directly for the Neurocore's control panel, planting a high-yield explosive. "You cannot stop progress," Core said calmly as Kaelen set the timer. "I'm not stopping it," Kaelen grunted, dodging a crushing blow from one of the guards. "I'm deleting it." He kicked off the console, firing his grappling line to the ceiling. "Core, the prisoners!" Maya's voice screamed over the comms. "They aren't running to the escape pods. They're all heading to you." The bomb detonated. The Neurocore overloaded, exploding in a cascade of raw energy. The psychic scream cut off, replaced by a deafening silence. Kaelen swung through the chaos as the two guards were consumed by the blast. He landed near Core, who was shielded from the explosion by a personal energy field, his expression unchanged. "Impressive," Core noted. Just then, the chamber doors hissed open, and standing there were not guards, but hundreds of Lyrans. Their silver-veined skin glowed in the darkness, their obsidian eyes all fixed on one man. Core. They didn't look angry. They didn't look vengeful. They looked connected. Lyra stood at the front, her hand outstretched. "You wanted to distill emotion, Silas," she said, her voice echoing with the power of hundreds. "You wanted to feel what we feel. Let us show you." And they did. They didn't attack him. They simply connected. They poured a century of their species' fear, pain, loss, and suffering directly into his empty soul. Silas Core, the man who felt nothing, was suddenly forced to feel everything. He collapsed, a screaming broken shell. The day was won. As Maya's gunship evacuated the last of the freed Lyrans, Kaelen stood with Lyra, watching Project Chimera burn against the backdrop of the dead moon. "It's not over," he said. "The Syndicate has other facilities. Other leaders." "No," Lyra said, taking his hand. Her touch was no longer just a feeling. It was a promise. "But we are not hiding anymore. We will find our people. We will hunt the hunters." Kaelen looked at her, at the fierce, beautiful hope in her eyes, and for the first time in a decade, the ghosts in his past were silent. He was no longer a retired executive or a haunted specter. He was Kaelen, and he was home. The journey wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. A man who ordered the most expensive meal in the universe and ended up starting a revolution. It proves that sometimes your life's true purpose finds you in the last place you expect, usually after you've blown it up. We all have our own syndicates to fight, our own fortresses to tear down. The important thing is to never let them turn people into products. Never let them tell you that compassion is a weakness. It's the greatest weapon we have. If you're ready to join the fight, hit that subscribe button. And remember to always check the menu carefully. You never know when dinner might just change your life.